The rain poured relentlessly as Thomas Keller approached the gates of St. Miriam's Monastery. The once holy place stood deep in the Carpathian Mountains, shrouded in fog and forgotten by time. He had traveled from Vienna, sent by the church to investigate reports of unholy occurrences that the local villagers whispered about in terrified tones. The monastery, built in the 14th century, had long ceased to house any active order. Only one nun, Sister Agnes, was said to remain, a woman who had taken a vow of silence decades ago and never left the grounds. Thomas could feel the air shift as he entered the courtyard. The bells above the chapel tower had long since rusted, but faint echoes of their chime seemed to hum through the mist. Every step he took was heavy, his boots sinking slightly into the wet earth. When he reached the old wooden door, it opened before he could knock. A candlelight flickered from within, revealing a tall, veiled figure in black. Her hands were clasped tightly around a wooden rosary, the beads moving as if she prayed without sound. Thomas greeted her, but she said nothing, only tilted her head slightly and motioned for him to follow. The air inside smelled of wax, decay, and something metallic, something faintly like blood. As they walked through the dark hall, he saw murals of saints peeling off the walls, their painted eyes scratched away. A strange chill ran through him when he noticed that every depiction of Christ had its mouth covered by a smear of black paint. Sister Agnes led him to a small guest room, placed a candle by the bedside, and before leaving, turned to him. For a second, the candlelight revealed her face, pale, thin, and utterly expressionless. Her lips were sewn shut. That night, Thomas could not sleep. The candle Sister Agnes had left burned low, its flame dancing weakly in the damp air. Every few minutes, the silence of the monastery was pierced by faint sounds. Not footsteps, but something softer, like fabric brushing against stone. He sat up in bed, listening closely. The sound seemed to move along the corridor, pausing outside his door, then fading away again. Curiosity overcame fear, and he lit the candle, stepping out into the hallway. The walls were lined with ancient wooden crosses, many of them turned upside down or broken. At the far end of the corridor, he noticed a door slightly ajar. From it came a low, rhythmic whispering. He moved closer, heart pounding, and peeked through the gap. Inside was the chapel. The pews were covered in dust, and yet, in the center, a group of nuns in black habits were kneeling in prayer, or so he thought. Their heads were bowed, their bodies swaying, but when he whispered a soft hello, none moved. He pushed the door open. The air was freezing cold. As he stepped inside, he saw the truth. They were not alive. The nuns were wax figures, their faces eerily lifelike, eyes closed, lips sewn shut just like Sister Agnes. Some were cracked, with wax melted down their cheeks like tears. And behind the altar stood a tall cross, but instead of Christ, it held the burned remains of a nun nailed to the wood. Thomas stumbled back, choking on his breath. Then, faintly, a whisper came from behind him, right by his ear. Silence must be kept. He spun around. No one was there, only the flicker of his candle, trembling violently. By morning, Thomas found Sister Agnes waiting at his door. She handed him a tray with bread and water, then gestured for him to follow. They walked through winding hallways until they reached a large iron door, sealed with wax and marked with strange sigils. When Thomas pointed at it, Sister Agnes shook her head violently, a silent warning. He asked her what lay behind it, but she only tapped the cross around her neck and lowered her eyes. "Is this where the unholy began?" he muttered to himself. Her hands trembled, and she pointed toward the chapel, as if begging him to pray. After she left, Thomas examined the seal. The wax was centuries old, yet warm to the touch, as if freshly poured. Beneath the sigils, faint Latin words read, "Ut siliat demonium," that the demon may be silenced. That night, he dreamed of the iron door opening on its own. Behind it was not darkness, but a room full of mirrors, each reflecting Sister Agnes. Hundreds of her, all staring at him, their mouths moving beneath the stitches. He woke to the sound of metal scraping stone. From the corridor came a deep groaning noise, followed by a single whisper, "It's awake." By the third day, Thomas began to hear voices beneath the monastery floor. They rose from the cracks at night, chanting in Latin, mixed with crying. He placed his ear against the stone and swore he could hear nails scratching from below. When he mentioned it to Sister Agnes, she fell to her knees, clutching her rosary, shaking her head in terror. Later, Thomas found an old journal inside the library. The ink was faded, but one entry remained clear. The sisters tried to silence her, but her voice still echoes. She will never forgive them. That night, the whispering grew louder. The voices began to form words, calling his name. "Thomas, come below." He followed the sound to a loose stone slab near the chapel floor. Beneath it, he saw a staircase spiraling down into darkness. The moment he touched the first step, every candle in the monastery blew out at once. Holding a lantern, Thomas descended the narrow staircase. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with the scent of iron and rot. At the bottom, he reached an ancient crypt, filled with coffins stacked along the walls. The carvings on them weren't names, they were warnings. In the center lay a coffin wrapped in chains. The wood pulsed faintly, like something inside was breathing. On its lid were etched the same words he'd seen before, "Ut siliat demonium." He leaned closer, noticing claw marks on the chains. Then a faint heartbeat, slow, steady. Suddenly, the lantern flickered, and a whisper came from inside the coffin. "Thomas, help me." He froze. The voice was not demonic. It was soft, female, desperate. He hesitated, then reached for the chains. At that exact moment, the sound of rapid footsteps echoed above him. The ground trembled, and Sister Agnes's muffled scream pierced the silence. Thomas ran up the stairs, the lantern swinging wildly. The monastery shook as if something massive moved beneath it. When he burst into the chapel, the air was thick with smoke. Sister Agnes was on the floor, clawing at her stitched mouth, blood seeping through the threads. She pointed toward the crypt stairs, eyes wide with horror. "It's out!" she gasped through the stitches. The sound barely human. Thomas rushed back down, but the coffin was open. The chains lay broken, twisted like vines. From the darkness, a trail of bloody footprints led deeper into the catacombs. He followed them, whispering prayers under his breath. The passages grew narrower, carved with old prayers and strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Suddenly, a shadow darted past him. A figure in a nun's habit, moving unnaturally fast. "Who are you?" he shouted, his voice echoing. The figure turned slowly. It was a nun, her face pale as bone, eyes hollow, lips torn apart by the stitches she had ripped open. She smiled, blood dripping down her chin. "Silence is a sin, Father," she hissed. Then she lunged. He stumbled backward, the lantern crashing to the floor and shattering. Darkness swallowed the corridor, broken only by the faint red glow from the symbols on the walls. He felt her cold hands grasp his neck, impossibly strong, bones cracking beneath her grip. "Forgive me," he gasped. She paused. For a moment, her face softened. Her eyes flickered with something human, sorrow. Then she whispered, "You should not have freed me." And just as suddenly as she appeared, she was gone. The air fell still. Thomas collapsed, coughing blood. When he looked up, he saw the altar above him glowing faintly through the cracks in the ceiling. He dragged himself back up the stairs. Sister Agnes was gone, but on the chapel floor, written in blood, were the words, "She remembers." He realized then, the silence of the monastery wasn't holy. It was containment. Desperate to end the nightmare, Thomas entered the confessional booth. Perhaps God would hear him there. He knelt, crossing himself, and whispered, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I have unleashed something I do not understand." From the other side, there was silence. Then, a voice, low, female and trembling. "Your sin is not releasing her, but silencing her." Thomas froze. He looked through the lattice. There was no one there. The air turned icy. The curtain fluttered though there was no wind. And suddenly, the voice came again, this time right behind him. "You took her voice. Now she takes yours." Pain exploded in his throat. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Blood filled his mouth. When he looked in the mirror opposite the booth, his lips were sewn shut. At dawn, the monastery bells rang for the first time in decades. The villagers below the hill watched in confusion. No one had lived there for years. Inside, the chapel doors burst open. Thomas staggered out, covered in blood, his lips sealed, eyes wide in silent horror. Behind him, the organ began to play on its own, a haunting melody that echoed across the valley. Sister Agnes stood at the altar, her stitches gone, her mouth open in a silent scream. And in that soundless cry, the stained glass windows shattered one by one, letting in the pale morning light. The villagers swore they saw two figures, a priest and a nun, walking into the forest beyond the monastery, hand in hand. But neither cast a shadow. Weeks passed. The village at the base of the hill began to change. Dogs barked at empty streets at night, and children woke screaming from dreams of a woman in black standing at their windows. The church bells rang at random hours, though no one was inside the monastery to ring them. Father Michael, the new priest sent to bless the area, arrived with holy water and skepticism. "The mind plays tricks," he told the frightened villagers. "There are no ghosts here." But that night, as he prayed in his quarters, he heard faint singing. A woman's voice, soft, mournful, echoing from the hills. He stepped outside, lantern trembling in his hand. The melody was beautiful, until he realized it was coming from the direction of the abandoned monastery. And worse, he recognized the words. It was a hymn forbidden by the church centuries ago, the one said to awaken the souls of the damned. When the last note faded, the wind stopped, and from the darkness of the forest he saw her, a nun, pale and still, holding a rosary made of teeth. Her lips were sewn, yet the song continued. By the next morning, the entire village was in panic. Chickens were found mutilated, their bones arranged in strange circular patterns. An old man swore he saw the nun floating above the fields before sunrise. Others whispered that the dead of the village graveyard had started to move. Father Michael gathered a group of men to go up the hill. They carried crosses, torches, and prayers on their lips. But the path to the monastery was no longer the same. The trees leaned inward, forming a tunnel of darkness, and whispers followed them as they walked, not from behind, but from inside their heads. When they reached the gate, the ground trembled. The church door stood open, glowing faintly with candlelight. Inside, someone had written across the altar in dried blood, "Silence is broken." One of the men screamed. A woman's figure was standing behind Father Michael. He turned, heart racing, but there was no one there, only the faint echo of a voice. "You came to listen. Now you will never stop hearing." That night, the village could not sleep. Every home, every corner, every wall echoed the same faint hymn, the one from the monastery. Even when people covered their ears, the sound came from within. Father Michael tried to perform an exorcism at dawn, but the moment he began the ritual, his Bible burst into flames. The words on the pages twisted into symbols, the same ones carved on the monastery walls. The people began to lose their minds. Mothers whispered to invisible children. Old men clawed at their ears until they bled. And from the church bell tower, a single note rang out, pure and long. It didn't stop. Hours passed. Still, the bell rang. At sunset, a young boy stumbled into the village square, trembling. "They're singing again," he said, his eyes blank. "Who?" asked Father Michael. The boy's lips moved, but another voice answered, deep, cold, and ancient. "The silent ones." Late that night, the church fell silent again. The caretaker, Father Michael, stayed behind to pray, hoping to cleanse the darkness that had taken Sister Helena years ago. But when he glanced at the mirror in the hallway, he froze. The surface rippled like black water, and from its depth, a pale hand pressed against the glass. Then another. The figure of a nun began to emerge, her face half-burned, her eyes hollow yet glowing faintly. He whispered a prayer, trembling, "Lord, deliver us from evil." But the mirror answered with a whisper that wasn't his. "Too late, Father." The candles around him flickered violently and went out. When the other priests entered later, all they found was his rosary, melted into the floor, and a faint reflection of his terrified face, trapped forever inside the glass. Weeks later, a new nun arrived to serve the chapel, Sister Clara. She had heard the stories but refused to believe them. "Faith defeats fear," she said confidently. But faith trembled when she cleaned the old mirror and saw, for a second, another nun standing right behind her. Identical but with black eyes. Every night afterward, she heard whispers behind the glass, voices of prayer mixed with screams. The reflection began to move differently from her. Sometimes it smiled when she didn't. One night, Clara awoke to find the mirror glowing faintly. Her reflection turned toward her, though she hadn't moved, and whispered, "Join the choir." By morning, the bed was empty, and in the reflection, two nuns now stood side by side. One alive, one not. The church sent investigators, priests specialized in exorcism. They sealed the room and began prayers of cleansing. But the mirror vibrated, humming like a living creature. One priest screamed, clutching his head, shouting that something was crawling under his skin. The glass cracked, but instead of shattering, it bled. Thick, dark liquid dripped down, forming the shape of a cross upside down. One of them tried to destroy it with holy water. The liquid hissed and evaporated instantly, leaving words written across the surface. "Reflect and repent, or join." By dawn, all three priests were gone. Only the mirror remained, and now, faintly, three silhouettes could be seen inside it. Terrified, the bishop ordered the mirror removed and locked away in a monastery's vault. For years it remained sealed, until a curator from a religious museum requested to display it as a relic. Against warnings, it was shipped to Rome. On the first night of the exhibition, security cameras recorded something strange. Figures moving inside the reflection after closing time. The next morning, visitors found the hall empty, all mirrors in the room shattered, except one. And in that one, if you looked closely, you could still see faint traces of nuns' robes fluttering in endless black. The curse spread quietly. People who took photos near the mirror claimed they saw extra faces in the background, veiled, pale, and watching. One photographer disappeared after insisting on capturing the truth. His camera was found days later. Every photo showed the same figure standing behind him, closer in each shot. Experts examined the mirror but couldn't explain the cold air it emitted or the whispering voices recorded by audio devices. Some say the nun was never exorcised. She became the mirror itself. Today, the mirror of the nun is said to be lost, stolen from the museum. Some believe it was melted down. Others whisper it reappears wherever sin and guilt thrive. Videos online claim to show reflections moving on their own. Skeptics laugh, until they start seeing her too. If you ever look into an old mirror and feel like someone else is breathing with you, don't look again. Because once she knows your reflection, she'll find you. Years later, a woman bought an antique mirror at an estate sale. She loved its ornate frame, unaware of its past. That night, her husband heard her speaking softly in the dark, facing the mirror. He thought she was praying, until he heard two voices. The next morning, she was gone. The mirror was cracked, and behind the glass, a faint outline of a nun's veil shimmered, smiling.